Hi everybody, this is Professor JB Morin from Football Science Institute. I want to talk to you today about something very specific and I think something underestimated in the overall return to sport process after lockdown due to coronavirus. So this very specific topic is about foot and calf issues due to going back to training and going back to play with specific football boots, football shoes, and in other sports with very specific sports shoes, because one of the main characteristics of modern sports shoes is that they have a very stiff sole and they have a very stiff surface. So this is my standard football shoes, okay? And what you need to realize is that the sole is very stiff. It is not carbon. It's synthetic, but if it's carbon, it's even stiffer. It means that this does not deform. And it also means that when I step with that shoe, I need a very big torque at the calf muscles to act and go run, change direction, jump, etc. So it means that if during lockdown you've been, or your players have been for, let's say, 8 weeks, 10 weeks without wearing this type of shoe, their foot muscles, their foot intrinsic muscles, the fascia tissues, the aponeurosis, the tendons, and the calf soft tissue have been very likely de-adapted to this kind of stimulus, because if you go from every day wearing this type of shoe to nothing, and you do the entire lockdown with a very light and very flexible sport shoes like this one, maybe there's a risk that you have a good level of fitness, you have a good level of explosiveness, you did everything right, so you're back to play. But the problem is that you have used some very soft shoes around during 8 to 10 weeks. And so when you will come back to play with this kind of shoe, the transition will be very likely to intense, and you will have some risks of injuries that are plantar fascia injuries, calf muscle injuries. And if you follow closely football these days, you've seen that in Spain, in Germany, for example, and some of my colleagues told me in Spain it was the same. The players, when they come back to pro playing, if they wear the stiff shoes, football shoes every day, they are gonna have issues. So I'm going to explain you my advice. My advice is that you should have a transition from soft running shoes to stiff football shoes that's progressive. So you could use some soft shoes to do some specific drills, and these kind of shoes almost every day, but very little to increase, but not systematically. That's the first advice. And the second advice is, if you are still in quarantine, if you are still locked down because in your country you cannot play football again, make sure to have your fitness sessions with these kind of shoes, okay? But also make sure to have some kind of fitness session with your specific shoes. So if you want to maintain a specific stimulus, then you have to maintain the specific shoes that go with it, because they have a very stiff and very specific insole as well. So my advice is that you should keep on playing with these shoes, your football shoes, every 2 days. Like, don't stop using them for a long time, because when you will stop using them for a long time and you will use them again, then the transition might be very difficult for your soft tissues. So this is an example that's also worth discussing in other sports like track and field. This is track and field spikes. What you see here is a very stiff plate. These shoes are very stiff. So if you're a sprinter and you didn't use the shoes for a long time because you could not, then you should be very careful when you go back to practice. Then this advice also works for basketball. This is basketball shoes, and here inside the sole there's a carbon fiber plate, so you can almost not bend them. It's very stiff. So again, if you go around and never use them for 10 weeks and then you go back to basketball training with jumps, change of directions, you might have issues. So think about that transition. And finally, if you're a cyclist, you know that this type of shoe is very, very, very stiff. This is carbon, several layers of carbon. So again, if you cycle and you don't use your shoes for weeks, you should be careful when you come back. So first advice, be very careful and be progressive in the mechanical load, because the torque and the load at the muscle tissues will be very high, and the fascias as well. And advice number 2 is, if you are still locked down, and if you maybe in the future, unfortunately, we will have to face other periods of lockdown. If you go through a period of lockdown, don't forget to do your fitness sessions, do your everything correctly, but from time to time, use your football shoes and use them even to go around or to play pass with your kids or your friends. Don't forget to maintain that specific stiff shoe stimulus a lot, okay? Because if you don't maintain, use it or lose it, then the transition will be dangerous. And I'm afraid that's going to be a major issue in the professional football clubs, where that transition has been very fast, too fast, and the games are coming, and that load might be very high. Okay, so be safe, and see you next time. Bye-bye.